The rain came down in sheets, drenching the hills of Montana as thunder cracked across the sky. At the edge of a jagged cliff that overlooked a 100-foot drop into the roaring river below, a woman in a white wedding dress clung desperately to a narrow ledge, her fingers white from the strain. Her veil, soaked and torn, flapped violently in the wind. She wasn't just any bride, she was Celeste Langford, daughter of billionaire hotel tycoon Harold Langford, and today was supposed to be the grandest day of her life. Instead, she was clinging to a cliff, cold, terrified, and utterly alone. Only an hour earlier, a helicopter had whisked her and her fiancé to this remote hilltop estate where the ceremony was to take place. Everything had been planned down to the last diamond-encrusted detail. But Celeste had run from a future that didn't feel like her own, from a man she didn't love, and from a wedding that felt more like a merger than a marriage. In her panic, she'd gotten lost in the storm and too close to the edge. The earth had crumbled beneath her feet, and now she hung in limbo between life and death. A mile away, in a rundown cabin surrounded by rusting farm equipment and half-planted fields, Samuel Hayes was sipping tea and listening to the wind howl through the cracks in his windowpanes. Life hadn't been kind to Samuel. At 42, he was a widower who had lost his wife to cancer and nearly lost the farm in the years since. Yet, despite the hardships, he'd never lost his sense of decency or the call of compassion that had guided him through life. When he heard the faint but frantic honking echo through the storm, followed by a woman's scream carried by the wind, he didn't hesitate. Grabbing his coat and flashlight, Samuel raced into the storm, guided only by instinct and the pull of something unexplainable. The mud sucked at his boots, and the rain stung his eyes, but he kept going. After 20 minutes of running, he saw it, a white dress dangling over the edge, the frantic flail of a hand, the unmistakable eyes of someone who knew death was seconds away. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the storm. "I'm coming." Celeste looked up, barely able to process the voice over the panic in her chest. All she could see was a figure, soaked and muddy, dropping to his knees just above her. Samuel crawled forward slowly, bracing himself with every inch. "Don't look down," he said calmly, "just focus on my voice." I can't hold on much longer," she sobbed, her fingers slipping. "You can. You will," he replied, his hand reaching for hers. "Look at me." Their eyes locked, hers, wide with fear, his, calm and steady like the earth itself. With a burst of strength and timing born of desperation, he grabbed her wrist just as she lost her grip. Her body swung toward the cliff face, slamming hard, but Samuel didn't let go. Inch by inch, using strength he didn't know he still possessed, he pulled her up onto solid ground, collapsing beside her as she gasped and cried. For a moment, there was only the sound of the rain and two hearts pounding like drums of survival. Samuel pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. "Why were you out here alone?" he asked gently. "I was running, from a wedding I didn't want. From a life that isn't mine," she whispered. He didn't ask for details. He just nodded, helped her to her feet, and led her back toward the faint glow of his cabin light, one slow, muddy step at a time. Inside the cabin, Celeste sat on a worn couch by the fire, wrapped in a quilt that smelled of cedar and earth. Samuel handed her a mug of hot tea, his hands still shaking from the adrenaline. "You saved my life," she said, her voice trembling more from emotion now than cold. "I just did what anyone should," Samuel replied. "No," she said firmly. "Most people wouldn't. Not for a stranger. Not in this weather." Samuel smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I've known loss. When you see someone dangling off the edge, you don't think about who they are. You just save them." The hours passed. Celeste told him everything, how her father had orchestrated the wedding like a business deal, how she had spent years trying to be the perfect daughter, how today she finally snapped. Samuel listened without judgment, just silent nods and the occasional word of encouragement. By morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight broke through the clouds, bathing the farm in golden light. Celeste stood at the window, staring at the hills she nearly died on, her dress still muddy and torn. "I need to go back," she said quietly. "There are people looking for me. But I need you to know something first." Samuel looked up from where he was patching a broken chair. "What's that?" "You didn't just save my life. You saved me. No one's ever looked at me the way you did. Like I was a person, not a prize." She paused. "I'm going to change my life. I don't know how yet, but I will. And when I do, I'm going to come back here." He smiled, half believing her, half not. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," she said, stepping closer. "I owe you the truth. And the truth is, I want to know the man who saw me, not the millionaire bride, but the terrified woman on the edge." She left that afternoon, leaving behind a note tucked into the corner of the couch. It read, "I'll find my way back to who I am. And if you'll let me, I'd like to find my way back to you too." Months passed. Samuel returned to his fields, to his lonely dinners and quiet mornings. He didn't expect her to come back. He figured she had been swept back into her world of limos and headlines. But one crisp morning in October, a black SUV pulled up the dusty road. Out stepped Celeste, wearing jeans, boots, and a soft smile. She'd sold her shares in the family company. Started a non-profit for women escaping arranged or coerced marriages. She'd made the front page again, not as a bride, but as a woman reborn. Samuel stared at her, speechless. "I told you I'd come back," she said. He stepped off the porch slowly, his boots crunching on gravel. "You really did the unthinkable." She grinned. "You did it first." They didn't rush anything. Over time, they grew into each other's lives, his slow mornings and quiet strength, her newfound purpose and laughter. And in that unlikely union, between a farmer who had lost everything and a runaway bride who had found herself, they discovered something neither expected. That sometimes, the richest lives are built not with wealth, but with moments of courage, kindness, and the simple act of reaching for a stranger's hand on the edge of a cliff.